Hey there. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one of the key components of a successful Kinstretch practice. Now, as you might be gathering, Kinstretch is all about building body control, and that means that it really should improve your ability to do any physical task. But really, if you look at the demands of any physical task, it's going to come down to how tuned in your brain is to the different parts of your body, and how effectively you can leverage that tuned inness to control and move your body in the way that you want to. So when you think about what happens when you contract a muscle, there are two components that we want to focus on here today. The first is that your brain is sending a signal through your nervous system to the target tissue. So if Hannah's going to squeeze her fist, her brain's going to send a signal, and that signal is going to manifest in a squeezed fist. But there's also a signal that's going to be sent from the tissue back to her brain. And that quality of a feedback loop is magical. It is how we accomplish all of the physical tasks of our lives, but it often can be a little bit faulty in the tissues that we don't have good control of. So this idea of being able to control tension around your body really has to do with how your nervous system is formed and shaped. So if Hannah just turns around for a second, this usually makes sense for people. Our nervous system is centered and housed in our brains, and then that main root has a main branch of a spinal cord, and then that spinal cord continues to branch out. There are branches that go to your arms and your upper body and your legs, and then through those appendages, the nervous system continues to branch. Now, this branched quality of your nervous system is something that we can take advantage of. So I'm going to have Hannah turn back around, and you can join us now here by making a fist. And feel for a moment how if you make like a very light fist, the experience of that tension is really centered just in your hand and maybe your forearm. So take note of that. Now, if I ask you to squeeze that fist just maybe 20% more intensely, take a moment and really gather that tension. And notice how now the experience is not just in your hand and forearm, but has spilled over into your upper arm, maybe even your shoulder. Okay, relax again. Now this time I want you to do it gradually. So we're going to start really light, and then you're going to slowly increase the tension of your fist squeeze, and feel that as you bring it up to 50%, 60%, and keep building all the way to the strongest fist you can. Maybe you can see Hannah's shaking a bit. Now your whole body is involved with this. That tension has spilled over and effectively used the tissue in your torso, even though we're focusing on the fist. So relax here. So basically what you can think there is that signal that you sent from your brain to your fist started by just going to that branch, but then as you sent a stronger signal, more branches began to become part of the effort. That is called irradiation. And that ability to send tension and spread out tension is central to having a really effective Kinstretch practice. So that's what I want you to get a feel for here today. So go ahead, come down into a 90-90 position like Hannah's going to show. Now we really utilize irradiation in two central ways in Kinstretch class. The first is to begin to send signal and receive signal from tissue that is not used to loading. So I want you to feel that first. One common area that people have trouble with is internal rotation, and that's the position of your back leg here. So we might ask you in class to place your hand right on your hip area, right in that crease area, and basically we're trying to begin to control the contraction of the tissue that's right there. So in terms of leveraging irradiation, we would start by asking you to brace your torso. That is to contract parts of your upper body that you have clear control over. And then from there, we have a chance to begin to spill over that tension into area that you have less control of. So in class, I might ask you to establish that brace and then begin to start making your foot feel light. That's a direction that your body understands. And as you do that, I'm asking you to look for a contraction effort under your hand. Once you start to notice that effort, you can send more contraction there. And now we are using the tool of irradiation to direct tension to a specific area and therefore make the exercise more specifically effective for you. Another way that we can utilize irradiation is by bracing parts of our body that we don't want to move while we start to establish controlled movement in the part of the body that we do want to move. So to get a feel for that, I'm going to again have you set up in 90-90, but now turn your torso towards your front knee, and again start to brace your upper body. Now, like we found with the fist exercise, if you can press your hands and engage your arms in this activity, that effort, if it's strong enough, will spill over to your torso. And then I want you to begin to spill that over into your hip area, pelvis area, and feel that you are actively holding yourself as still and strong as possible, like a statue. We'll say that quite a bit in class. And then with that statuesque effort, you can now begin to think about lifting that back foot in a way that really forces the movement just to the back leg and just in the type of motion that we want. So Hannah, as she lowers her foot and raises her foot, her whole body is staying still. Okay? Now relax for a moment and notice what might happen if you didn't put that initial effort into holding your body still. If I just said, okay, go ahead and lift your back leg in 90-90. Good. Now as she does this for reps, notice where her pelvis is moving, notice how her spine is moving, even notice how her shoulder blades are changing position. Now obviously if we're trying to build control of this leg and everything else is moving, we're not achieving the goal that we're after. So instead we would irradiate first and specifically to the non-moving part, and then we would go about moving that targeted area. And you can notice much less, if not zero, movement of the torso. So those are the two main ways that we're going to use that. Now, like any skill, you really get better at it the more you do it. So often when we introduce this in class, people sort of look at us funny and go, I don't think I have the kind of control you're asking for. Well, of course not at first. So I wanted to offer you a few ways to drill this in a real tactile way so that then you can bring it into your Kinstretch practice. So let's begin by getting into a forearm plank position, so basically elbows and knees. And then take a moment and try to contract your ab muscles on the front of your body so that if someone were to come over and karate chop your stomach, you'd be ready. And then you're going to try to keep that tightness as you step your feet back into a full plank. Okay? Now a plank position is inherently effortful. It's going to require some work just because gravity is working against you. But I want you to take this moment to actually ramp up the intensity of the plank to your max effort. Squeeze both fists, try to pop both biceps, make your toes heavier into the floor, and finally squeeze your butt as hard as you can. Hold it for 3, 2, 1, then comfortably come down, relax. Whew. That's some real effort, I hope. Now, we don't use that level of effort all the time in Kinstretch class. Sometimes we will. But it really is helpful to establish that 10 out of 10 tension, not able to send any more tension in your body. And remember, if you're tight in your fists and you're tight in your feet, there's a great likelihood that all the tissue in between is also receiving some of that signal from your brain. Now, once we have our 10 out of 10 established, obviously you can practice more planks on your own and sometimes we'll warm up with them. We also want to develop variable control of that tension. So now just make your way to quadruped on hands and knees. And here's another position where gravity is fighting against us a bit. So there's some effort. You might feel some effort in your arms and shoulders, maybe in your ab area, but not a whole lot because your knees are supporting you. However, simply by asking you to make your hand prints heavier into the floor, and then doing the same with your toes, either curled under or flattened out, by asking for more pressure into the floor, I want you to notice how all of a sudden your body's tension has elevated just a bit. Now make it a bit more of that. So now feel that your hands are pressing as hard as possible into the floor and your feet are pressing as hard as possible into the floor. Nothing in your body has moved, but hopefully you're feeling a bit more contraction effort. Let's call that an 8 out of 10. With control, I want you to bring it down to a 7 out of 10. 6 out of 10. 5. 4. 3. And now I guess you're about at a relaxed quadruped position. Okay, so that's another component that you want to practice, maybe use as a warm-up as you're beginning to get into Kinstretch to be able to have variable control. Now, one last component that is going to be extremely useful as you go about learning and executing your CARS practice, which you'll see in the video below, is to use that bracing feeling to keep the non-moving part of your body still, just like we were showing in 90-90. So to feel this, I want you to again come into a quadruped position. I'm going to have Hannah just turn towards the camera so you can really see this clearly. If you're in your passive quadruped, and I ask you just to lift your left hand off the floor, okay, and then set it down, then lift the right hand off the floor, okay. Now Hannah's pretty stable, she's pretty used to this exercise, so there's not a lot of movement there, but watch again, go left hand and right hand, and notice how there's a little bit of a shift in the body, there's a little rotation in the torso. Now, instead of that, before you lift the left hand, try bracing your torso. Really send that clear signal to your feet getting heavy, both hands getting heavy. Now shift the pressure from your left hand into your right hand. So now your right hand is extremely heavy, and then begin making your left hand lighter and lighter until it's off the ground. Now you have effectively moved your left arm with as little motion in the rest of your body as possible. Go ahead, place that left hand down. Shift the weight from your right hand to your left hand, actively, with control, sending that tension signal, and then keep that and smoothly lift the right hand off the ground. And again, notice how your irradiation bracing effort has prepared you to move that arm with control. All right, go ahead, try that a few more times, feeling how smoothly you can lift one hand off the ground while maintaining the brace tension in the rest of your body. Great. As you do your final rep on each side, just put some number, your best guess, of how hard your torso is working to stay in position. Is it a 6 out of 10? Maybe an 8 out of 10? Everyone's going to feel it a little differently, but the key part is that you are identifying and noticing that phenomenon at work. All right. Thanks for watching, and I hope that helps as you dive into your Kinstretch practice.